Number 1. The snow. I am not from the United States, and English is not my first language, so I must apologize if any of this is hard to understand. I got married when I was very young, and it was a mistake almost from the beginning. And my husband was very quick to anger. Really didn't show during our courtship. It began right after the marriage. Fortunately, since I have very good friends and a very supportive family, I was able to get out of the marriage quickly. We got a divorce, and due to his abuse of me, I was able to have a restraining order. I think people realize that restraining orders don't really do much. Not very long after our divorce, I began seeing my ex-husband around all the time. He appeared in my yard a few times, but it wasn't just that. When I was at work, he would wait outside in the parking lot. I had to either call the police or have someone I worked with go with me outside to my car. I wished that I had the money to just get up and move, but that wouldn't really have helped. I mean, if I moved away from my friends and family, it was possible he could have found me, and then I would have no family or friend support. We have very long winters here, and generally our first snowfall is very, very light. But this first snowfall was brutal. Then after about 3 hours of steady snowfall, it changed to freezing rain. By the time it was morning, there was at least 5 feet of snow and ice, and it covered everything. Work was shut down for a day or two. Normally my town is very, very prepared for a winter storm. Roads and parking lots get plowed pretty quickly, and things go back to normal. I think it was about a week or two before I noticed that I hadn't seen my ex-husband stalking me. It's odd how something that bothers you can slip your mind after it hasn't been around for a while. A couple weeks passed by, and I noticed that I still hadn't seen him. It was comfortable, don't get me wrong, but it was also slightly uncomfortable, not knowing what was going on. After about a month, I decided I would call his sister. She and I always got along, and she hated her brother, but she might have some idea of what was going on. So I called her and asked her if she had seen him lately. The sister then shocked me by letting me know that my ex-husband had moved. She told me that the afternoon before that horrible snow and ice storm, he had contacted her and let her know he was moving. He didn't tell her where, though. All he said was that it was difficult for him to live in an area with me, and he felt he needed to go on with his life. I was happier than I could have ever imagined. I can't even convey how happy it made me to finally be completely free of that man, and hopefully for good. I had a wonderful winter, and everyone at work even told me they could tell how much happier I was. As we went into late spring, the snow started to melt finally. I was looking forward to a nice warm spring. There had been so much snow and ice that, when the thaw finally came, it took days before all the snow and ice were melted. One morning, right before I left for work, I noticed something in my backyard. It was hard to make out what it was, so I went into the yard for a better look. I was horrified when I realized it was a corpse lying face down in my backyard. I quickly went into my house and called the police. Of course, the corpse was my ex-husband. I figure, since this is a scary story, that you had already figured that out. But that's not the scariest part. He had a bag with him. It had a cleaver, a hacksaw, and a container of lye. When everything was pieced together, we realized that he did plan on moving. But he was going to kill me first, saw me into pieces, and then dissolve me in lye. He must have thought by telling his sister he was moving that it would take suspicion off him or something. Unfortunately for him, he had an infarction in my backyard and died instantly. Then the heavy snowfall and ice covered him up for a long time. I was finally free of him, but I had something new to be afraid of. The possibility of what may have happened to me if he hadn't died. Number 2. Closet. And this is a really messed up story that happened to me when I was a kid. I was around 12 at the time. I was over at a friend's house playing video games. when it began to snow outside. We didn't think about it very much at first, but it didn't take long for the snow to really begin falling heavily. It even got dark outside, and it was hard to see very far in front of your face. Well, after a while, I decided it was probably a good idea for me to get on home. The snow didn't look like it was going to stop anytime soon, and if I waited any longer, I would be trudging through several feet of snow. So I went outside and began walking home. I need you to know a little bit about this neighborhood, what it was like. All the houses looked almost exactly the same. Really, other than the numbers on the mailbox, there wasn't much to distinguish one house from another. When I got outside, I had no idea how bad the storm had gotten. It looked like the snowstorm of all time, and I could hardly see 2 feet in front of my face. And the snowflakes were also kind of painful. I remember them hitting my eyes and causing them to sting. I began holding my head down and looking at the ground as I walked. I finally got home after what was a harrowing experience. It had taken forever. I went up to the house and found that the door was locked. It was odd because we never really locked it during the day. I rang the doorbell a few times and no one came to the door. Then I rang it fast a few more times, desperately wanting to get into the house. The door flew open, and the man that was standing in the doorway was not someone that I knew. He was big and he looked angry. My initial reaction was to turn and run because someone had broken into our house. However, the man grabbed me and easily overpowered me. He pulled me into the house, threw me into a closet, and locked the door. I was crying and terrified, and then I noticed that there was absolutely nothing in that hall closet. No shoes, no jackets, nothing like that at all. It was completely empty. I thought maybe the guy had stolen from us, but who would steal old jackets and shoes and stuff? And that was when the scariest thought occurred to me. What if I'd walked up to the wrong house? I mean, my vision was impaired, so it was possible. And then I became very, very frightened. At first, I tried yelling for them to let me out, but I didn't do that for long. When I tried, someone would come by and pound on the door and tell me to shut up, and then they would leave. I honestly thought I was going to die in that closet. Once I quieted down, I was able to hear somewhat what was going on outside. The man, or men, were moving around a lot, and there were some odd noises like he was breaking things. I just sat in the corner of the closet, crying and scared I might be getting killed. I have no idea how long I was in that closet, waiting to see if I would die. It was the worst moment of my entire life. The outside noises got a little louder finally, and I heard a couple voices I hadn't heard before. I began banging on the closet, trying to get someone's attention. After a moment, the closet door was open, and a police officer was there. He was surprised to see me, but told me to just remain in the closet for a minute, and he called something in on his radio. After a while, I was able to come out of the closet. Looking around, I saw the walls of the house had been torn up. I didn't understand it at the time, but the men were stripping the building of all of its metals, copper wiring, pipes, everything. They were tearing the walls open. The house was unoccupied. However, my dad, our house was the next one over, had seen a light turned on and movement, so he called the police. He had no idea that I was being held there. There were 2 men who had warrants out for them, and they were trying to find a way to make some quick money, and I guess stealing the metal from that house was the way to go. They got freaked when they saw me at the door and claimed they were only keeping me in the closet until they were done. They didn't want me going to my home and telling my family what I had seen before they could finish working. Honestly, I don't know whether I believe that story or not. I guess it doesn't matter, as I'm okay, and I have lived a long way past 12 years old. I'll tell you this, however, for a few hours, I didn't think I would. Number 3. The car. The town that I live in is in the Mid-South. It rarely, if ever, snows there, and whenever it does, just about everything in the area shuts down. You never see cars on the road, and the entire area becomes a ghost town. I was one of the people who was never prepared for the winter. When we got our first snow that year, my car actually froze up. I mean, the locks were frozen. Although I didn't immediately need to go anywhere, it was evening, I knew I would need to in the morning. My job would be open. I called my dad, and he suggested I walk to a gas station and get the stuff that I was supposed to put in the keyhole, and it would unfreeze it. I had to go at night, too, because I had an early morning, and I knew I would sleep better knowing I had what I needed. So I set off to go to the gas station. Normally it was not that bad of a walk. I would make it in like 30 minutes and back, but it was snowing hard and the ground was slippery. As I turned on one of the streets, I noticed a car drive past me. It was a unique-looking silver-colored car. He was driving pretty fast for the weather he was in, though. He turned a corner ahead of me and was gone, so I kept walking. Before I got to the road that he had turned on, though, I noticed the car was coming straight towards me. It took me only a moment to realize it was the same car that I'd seen before. This time, however, it drove past me and disappeared on the road that my home was on. It didn't take long before I noticed the car again. This time, he was coming down the street that he had originally turned on the first time I had seen him turn. This time, he was coming down the street that he had originally turned on the first time I had seen him turn. It was odd, and it was beginning to get a little creepy. I mean, this guy, or whoever it was, kept going down roads for what seemed like no purpose. It was creepy and more than a little weird. It got weirder, though. The next time I saw the car, I noticed it was coming from behind me on the road. I turned to look, and I was glad I did, because the car was coming right at me. It was sliding. It was aiming for me. I quickly jumped into the yard of the house I was in front of. The car went decently onto the curb, and then turned back on the road, and kept going. When it had gotten a little bit in front of me, it stopped, and turned its lights out in the middle of the street, and the car was still running, though. I didn't know what to do. I was scared, and that car had tried to hit me. I didn't want to walk past it in the road. If he was willing to hit me with his car, he might be willing to do much worse. After I didn't move for a few moments, and that seemed like a few hours to me, and the car turned its light back on, and then began flashing them. But still, he didn't move. When I did the only thing I could think of, I ran up to the door of the house whose yard I was in. I knocked and told them what was going on, and they were kind and let me inside, but the moment they did, the car took off. We called the police, who came over. The police already had an idea of what was going on when they arrived. Apparently, a car, matching the description of the one I had seen, crashed into someone's house, injuring the two men driving it very badly. Fortunately, they were the only ones that got hurt, and then they went to prison. I do often wonder, what if? What if I hadn't looked behind at that moment? Would I have been hit and killed? What would have happened if I walked up to the car when it was blocking my way? Would they have killed me? I don't know the answer, and I really don't want to know, even though the question does really, really bug me from time to time. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. You know, I'm having a really good day. I got the word processor that I enjoy writing on, so I can edit stories, and it makes me feel more comfortable doing it that way. I really wanted to get these stories out because I really love winter, and I know you like the stories too. I'm not making any promises, but I'm going to try hard to have at least one horror cliche theater and a couple more story videos done before the end of the month. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to use the subscribe button below and the bell, or use the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. If you have an original story that you like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please mail it to the address in the description. Also, leave me a comment and share this video with someone you think might enjoy it. But whatever you do or don't do, you need to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.